You know, there is nothing greater than seeing and feeling love. On the romantic side of love, we have the Hallmark Channel and Valentine's Day to prove that point. But love is deeper than that. If we closed our eyes and thought about what love looks like, I am sure that several images would come to mind. We see love as a mother holds a newborn child. We see love when we watch two people get married. We see love when a puppy licks our face. We see love when grandparents are watching their grandchildren in the Christmas play. We see love when two people who have been married for a very long time still holding hands. I think it's real easy to see love in all of those warm, fuzzy events. But we also see love in those not so perfect ways. I recall a story that I heard by a minister by the name of Michael Remiger. He tells this story about his grandparents. They had worked hard for many years and raised a family. They were able to retire and they were enjoying life. She spent her time playing bingo several times a week. And his grandfather watched his beloved Philadelphia Phillies baseball team on the TV sitting in his brand new recliner. Life was treating them well. That was until his grandfather had several strokes. Those strokes left him paralyzed so much that he couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, and he couldn't swallow. He had to have a feeding tube put in, and he needed nursing care. And it was suggested to the family that they put him in a nursing home. This was not an option, according to his wife. She was going to do what she needed to do to keep him at home. So she took him home and learned a new skill set in how to take care of her husband, including how to feed him through the feeding tube. Now the grandkids said that this stuff that she had to use to feed him, they called it the green goop. It was a green, thick, nasty type solution. So out came the recliner from their living room and in rolled a hospital bed. His grandparents quickly found a new normal in their life. Now Michael goes on to tell how he was attending college not too far away, and that one afternoon he stopped by on the way home for a visit. He opened the old screen door and it squeaked as he opened it. Have you ever walked into a room and knew that something was not right? That something was off? That's what happened to Michael that afternoon. When he entered the room, he could tell that something just wasn't right. As his eyes adjusted to the light, he could see his grandmother standing over his grandfather, and both of them were frustrated. His grandfather was motioning with his good hand, and she was frantically cleaning something up. Michael quickly realized that there was green goop everywhere. Something had gone wrong in the feeding process. And as a typical 19-year-old, he just wanted to get out of there. So he slowly started stepping backwards and slowly opened the screen door again. But it squeaked. That's when his grandmother turned around and realized that he was there. She gave him one of those firm grandmother looks and said, "Don't you dare. Don't you dare leave." Michael stopped right there. It was what she said next that Michael remembers the most. Don't you leave, because sometimes love looks like this. Friends, Love is not always fairy tales and happy endings. Love does look like green goo. Love looks like those nights when our kids are sick and we stay up all night rocking them, trying to comfort them. Love looks like this when we are worrying that it's midnight and our loved ones should have been home around 10. Love looks like telling your mom or dad 20 times that you'll be leaving for the doctor's appointment at 10. Love looks like cutting and delivering wood to someone you don't know on a 19-degree morning. Love looks like putting aside your lifelong plans to care for each other. Love looks like forgiving your parents for the mistakes they made in raising you. Who taught you about love? Who, by their example, showed you what love looks like? For me, it was my mom. Sure, I felt loved growing up, and she showed me love on many occasions. But what really showed me what love was the way that she took care of my dad when he was dying from cancer. And it was love that she showed while she watched over my grandparents for the next 15 years. I am sure that all of you have or had people in your life that shows you what real love looks like. I think we have to take a moment to silently to thank God for those who taught us how to love. Amen. Today's scripture from Paul's letter to the Corinthians is one that is commonly used at weddings. And I think a lot of people, when they hear these words in that context of a wedding, they are thinking about the type of love that talks about our feelings. Those feelings of being in love and what love should look like. I know you've all heard these words before. Love is patient, love is kind, it isn't jealous, it doesn't brag, it doesn't seek its own advantage. It doesn't keep records of complaints. Love puts up with all things, trusts all things, hopes for all things, and endures all things. These are great qualities, but that is not what Paul was writing about in today's text. What Paul was writing about is what love demands. What love demands of us. Love is a gift that has been given to us. A gift from God that never fails. From last week's scripture, the chapter right before the text, today's text, we know that we have been given gifts. So part of what Paul was telling us, that if we don't have the right attitudes in our hearts, if we don't use our gifts in love, they are meaningless. Paul was writing to the church in Corinth to remind them that the greatest gift of all is love. And what that gift of God's love demands from them, as well as what it demands from us today. Jesus calls us to love, and it's a demanding type love. Jesus shows us over and over in the stories of the Bible of what love looks like. He shows us that love looks like humble service as he washes the disciples' feet. That love looks like forgiveness by stopping the stoning of a woman caught in adultery. That love looks like inclusion by eating with Zacchaeus, the tax collector. And that love looks like forgiveness. Forgiveness by being crucified and dying on a cross for each one of us. My friends, Christ showed us how to love, and he has set a standard that we should strive for. Our love should always, always look like Jesus. But I have to confess, my love doesn't always look like that from day to day. It's because I'm human and I make mistakes. There have been times when I've chosen to love some, but not all. To give to some, but not to others. To include some, but not all. The thing we need to remember is that Jesus taught us that God's love is for all, offered to all, and available to all. God's love can and should break down the barriers that we build to divide people. Think for a moment. What would happen if we loved? What would happen if we loved like Jesus? What price are we willing to pay to show that love never fails? What would happen if spouses said to each other, "My love for you would forgive all things, endure all things, and hope for all things"? And what if we told our children and grandchildren and every kid that we know, "I love you. You are my highest priority, no matter what that cost"? What would happen if friends really stood by each other in the good times and in the bad times? And what would happen if we truly, truly loved our neighbors as ourselves? Our actions should reveal Christ's love for all people. Love is the greatest gift that has ever been given. Love is that glue that bonds us to God and bonds us to each other. Love never fails. And as Paul reminds us, without love, I am nothing. Thanks be to God.